I want to bring in ABC News reporter Olivia Rubin here right now, along with ABC News contributor and former FBI agent Brad Garrett for more. Olivia, what can you tell us right now in terms of the scale of this shooting and exactly what we know so far?
Well, you just laid a lot of it out right there, right? So they're talking about hundreds of people were inside of a church when this 40-year-old male suspect, as they laid it out, rammed the front doors of the church, went inside, started shooting before, as officials said, he was neutralized by law enforcement. But like, really what's so difficult here for law enforcement is that fire that they believe was deliberately set, that sort of pushed them back. And what they were able to do a bit, as you've heard, they just got that fire out about within the hour, is how they put it. Sources have also told ABC News that there was a partial collapse of the church building. So you can imagine you're already dealing with an active scene, an active gunfire scene with hundreds of individuals on site. And then you add in a fire with a partial collapse. That complicates it even more than it already was. That's also why officials are saying right now, tragically, that they do believe that they will be finding more victims here. They didn't say whether they would be alive, hopefully, or deceased, but they did say because of the way that that fire was set, that there were some people, unfortunately, trapped, unable to get outside of the building. Those were the words of the law enforcement official you just heard right there. So a very complex, very dynamic, as you said, hundreds of family, law enforcement, all on scene here, 100 FBI agents responding to what was just described as a very complex, dynamic, active scene right now. The chief there saying that this was still preliminary information and that they would be getting more as it goes on.
And we heard the chief say that this shooting began at 10:25 a.m. That's when church starts. This is a massive church. He said hundreds of people were inside right now, obviously taking part in the service. When the shots rang out, obviously when the officer said the suspect allegedly ran his vehicle into the front door, his exit, it began shooting. I want to turn now to Brad Garrett. Brad, what are the first steps in an investigation like this? What are you watching for as all the facts start to come out and things begin to unfold?
So the first thing, obviously, is determine that, yes, he did this alone. And secondarily, are there any devices, additional devices around the church, or, as you mentioned earlier, they're doing a search of his residence, what might be there? Obviously, at the house may give them some key points, things that he's written, things on his computer. Did he have inflammatory devices of some sort? Because, it looks like to me, again, this is so preliminary, is that he shot a fair number of people. If he had an automatic weapon and he had people in church and there were hundreds of them, I would have thought there would have been more people shot, which would suggest that if he started the fire, that's what he was doing before law enforcement arrived and engaged him. But, once you've got everything to a safe level, then obviously you have to figure out, what do we have here? Assuming there's nobody else connected, are there people, obviously, that know this person? Or was there information that he possibly was going to go do something like this? That's another part of this investigation. But, the real key here, obviously, is how could he have done what he did? And it looks like to me that part is pretty simple. He just literally drove his truck. It's like somebody walking into a school or a place of business and just using an assault weapon and start shooting people, which sadly we've had to talk about too much. So, all of these things kind of have to go together at the same time. The FBI probably are sending their evidence response team. I'm going to guess this is a rural part of Michigan. The FBI have trained evidence response teams in every field office, so they'll probably come. They mentioned that there's hundreds of people to interview. The FBI will help with that, as well as ATF. The key elements for ATF and FBI are, what started this fire, because that can help them through this investigation. And obviously, they have to do, these are really morbid type searches where you have to go through and literally find people that died in a fire. But all that will have to be done in a meticulous fashion, because every aspect of this case, as you move through it, sort of lays or plays into each other as far as motive, inflammatory stuff used, the weapon, and it all goes together to show maybe what you have here. And again, as I mentioned earlier, secondarily, if he is connected to anybody, what were the motivators for him to do this today?
And the thing that we're focusing right now is the swell of the federal response already making their way to Grand Blanc, Michigan. We heard the chief of police there say that those 100 FBI agents are already on their way. And we're now seeing the response from Attorney General Pam Bondi, who released a statement on X. I want to read that real quick. Releasing a statement saying, I'm receiving briefings about what appears to be a horrific shooting and fire at an LDS church in Grand Blanc, Michigan. FBI and ATF agents are en route to the scene now. Such violence at a place of worship is heartbreaking and chilling. Please join me in praying for the victims of this terrible tragedy. Brad, this follows the mass shooting at a Catholic church in Minneapolis just back in August. How can people stay safe when they're trying to worship?
It is a huge, huge dilemma. I mean, if you look in particular at how the how different faiths have taken on different forms of covering themselves as far as security, hiring off-duty law enforcement in uniform to be at the church. I mean, some churches, obviously, folks of the Jewish faith in particular. I've done security audits at 2 different churches or synagogues here in D.C. about what they can do, in fact, if they have a situation where somebody tries to get in the church. The problem with what this guy did, assuming a truck would fit through the front door of other churches, I mean, that's pretty, even if the place had law enforcement there, if he just literally drove his truck into it, that's a whole different, situation. But having said that, people are going to have to think, in particular, do they really need more security, or at least somebody outside of the perimeter that could slow down, detour, whatever it might be, someone that has ill intent to come into the church. The problem with that, obviously, is that can be expensive. Even doing structural things to a church can be expensive to make it more difficult to get into. So, this question gets asked of me almost every day of what can we do? Why should we be scared? And I say the answer is you shouldn't be scared, but you need to be prudent. And, every situation is different. But as we keep mounting up in the number of assaults that we have, mass shootings, sniper shootings, in this case, a mass shooting and a fire, I mean, it scares people, and rightly so. It's human nature. All I can say is that you just have to sort of be aware of your particular situation, and if you think you need more security, then do the best you can with that.
All right, I want to turn now to Olivia Rubin. Olivia, we know right now 1 person is dead, multiple victims in critical condition. Chief Rennie said they believe additional victims will be found once the investigation continues into the fire. He also said that the suspect used an assault rifle. What more are you learning about the suspect in this?
Well, what's going on right now, very likely, there's multiple aspects of the investigation, right? But 2 big ones. There's the scene, clearing the scene. They're looking for victims. They're interviewing witnesses. But there's also certainly, I would bet you, a major investigation already going on into this suspect right now, right? Based on what the chief says, it does seem like they already have an ID on him. They talked about a 40-year-old male suspect. It's likely they are talking about search warrants. They're probably executing one on his home. And just having been in this investigative unit at ABC News for years, we have spent years digging in to suspects who commit these horrific acts, why they do it. It's very similar to, how investigators do it. They are likely out right now already trying to get in contact with the suspect's family, with the suspect's friends, with the suspect's coworkers, whoever may have known him, spoken to him recently, and might have an indication on why he did this, because that's so key here right now, right? Which is talking about motive, why someone is driven to go out and do this, how they get to this point. And Ike, we have been speaking about this already in the wake of a number of violent attacks. Just recently, I've spoken to experts, former law enforcement, talking about what a concern this is, that individuals are going down this violent, radicalized path, why they do this. And so that's definitely key right now for investigators, why this suspect did it. Did he have any previous contacts with law enforcement? Was he already known to law enforcement? All of that definitely part of the investigation unfolding right now.
All right, I want to get into a statement right now. President Donald Trump releasing a statement on social media. I want to read that right now. Responding to this shooting, this is from the president. He's saying, I have been briefed on the horrendous shooting that took place at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, Michigan. The FBI was immediately on scene and will be leading the federal investigation and providing full support to state and local officials. The suspect is dead, but there is still a lot to learn. This appears to be yet another targeted attack on Christians in the United States of America. The Trump administration will keep the public posted, as we always do. In the meantime, pray for the victims and their families. This epidemic of violence in our country must end immediately. Again, this is after police are telling us a 40-year-old male suspect drove his vehicle through the front doors of this church, exited that vehicle, and fired several rounds of people. Officials are telling us, obviously, the church has been set fire. We know the roof has been partially collapsed. And they said that they're going to believe that they'll find additional victims once this scene is secure. So again, right now, we want to talk about the investigation. This is very preliminary. We know the facts, everything right now can change. So in terms of this investigation right now, we heard the chief of police say that about 100 FBI agents will be coming down here to talk to witnesses. Obviously, hundreds of people were in the church when this happened. What are some of the questions, or what are some of the things that they're looking for when they start to begin to speak to these witnesses who are here witnessing this tragedy?
Well, certainly, what did you see, right? Officials and law enforcement weren't there when this started unfolding. So certainly they're trying to find out what people in the building saw, this horrific event that they just lived through, and how exactly unfolded. They're likely combing through any surveillance video that may be in or outside of the church to let them know exactly what happened. They're also, sources have told us, trying to figure out who was in this church, Ike. Remember, they don't know exactly who was in there because there are hundreds of people. So they're likely talking to friends and family members to say, hey, do you have everyone that you came here with? Is there anyone unaccounted for that we should be looking for? Because unfortunately, as the chief said there are individuals who they believe did not make it out, and they are expecting to find more victims. And what sources have said is part of this questioning and this interviewing is to find out and get an exact number on who was in that church so they know exactly who they are looking for. Again, if they do already have an ID on this suspect, perhaps they are asking if they know anything about him. Does he have any connections to this church? Was he a member? We don't know any of that information yet, but all of those types of questions are what law enforcement and investigators are asking, combing through the scene right now so they can paint that full picture of exactly what happened. Because as we just heard from law enforcement there, everything they just said is preliminary, Ike. That is how these investigations go. This unfolded just at 10:25 a.m. As they work through the day, every minute, every hour, they are going to learn more information about exactly what happened here. So all of those questions posed to people on site so they can figure out exactly that.
And I want to talk to Brad real quick right now. Brad, we heard from the chief of police say that as soon as that suspect rammed his car into the front door, he was met with two officers who engaged in that firefight that eventually led to that suspect dying, obviously, from that firefight. We know now of what happened in Minneapolis back in August. Can you talk to us right now about the threat environment that we're seeing in this country right now? So many different types of targets are being victim of these tragedies, these shootings. What is the threat environment like right now? And how is that federal response essentially heightened during this time?
So I think it's extremely high, and unfortunately, one incident can play off of another. I mean, you had over 2 weeks ago, a sniper killing in Arizona, and then a couple days ago, you had one in Texas. Do they play off each other? I'm inclined to think yes. It's happened before in particular in school shootings. But the whole idea that we can get in front of people like this guy today, probably, it really boils down to, sadly, of what you know about what a person's about to do. If I quickly look at these two shooters that were up on roofs, if you look at the elements of what they did before they did it, in other words, had weapons lawfully. It's not against the law to drive around in your car. It's not against the law to say unpleasant or hateful things online. But once they went up on both those roofs and started shooting, then obviously they've broken the law. I'm only telling you that in that how would we have stopped them if we didn't know about them. The guy today, who knew, if anybody did, that he was going to go ram his truck into a church and then set it on fire? I mean, it's frightening, it's disturbing, it's frustrating. And if you're in law enforcement, it's like, how do you get in front of these things? And it's extremely difficult. And with sort of the temperature in the country right now and the divisiveness that goes on, it takes those few people that end up committing these horrible acts that are probably already on the fence or were on the fence to go do something really bad. And then the anger and rage and maybe what they're hearing online perhaps is enough to tip them over, and they go and commit these unbelievable, horrific acts. It's really disturbing, and I will just tell you, trying to figure out a way to, A, you're not going to stop them, but B, slow them down is also a big challenge for law enforcement.
All right, Brad Garrett, Olivia Rubin, thank you for your analysis.